Listen, I'm trying to get dicked down by Ryan Reynolds the same way that every other woman in this country is, okay? Okay? Let's be completely honest here. Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling can fucking spit roast me. I will be the largest pig in Cebu, Philippines. Okay? Continuation of last week's episode, which was released late because of a series of unfortunate events. Or
blame Jim Carrey. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But we're back on our bullshit again, talking about cops, because we did not get a chance to really expand on the ideas of why police unions are kind of a problem and why they exist in a sphere of their own, as opposed to the sphere that labor unions exist in.
Yeah. So last week was primarily about like the cops in general, and the specifics were more so just about Minnesota's specific sheriff's department, and then
their
some
police
California.
department.
Oh, their police department and California's LA sheriff's department. It was like those two things specifically, and like cops in general not being accountable. And we didn't, considering the series is supposed to be about labor more broadly, we didn't really get into that. So that's what we're trying to sort of
hash out.
Yeah.
Just kind of wrap up our thoughts on that one, because it didn't feel good where we ended it.
Yeah. And then, we realized where the whole conversation could go like 15 minutes after we ended the episode. So this is us trying to fix that, essentially.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to go back on last week just a little bit, and kind of just point out that the measures that were being used by the Minnesota Police Department, specifically with chokeholds and things that cut off airflow of potential suspects, has been an outlawed form of engagement.
Restraint.
Yeah, of restraint in many police departments since like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It was after Eric Garner in the NYPD where they had like officially outlawed the chokehold.
Yeah.
And
which puts that at roughly 10 years, right?
And even after that, there are still so many reports of NYPD officers still using that force because there is a sense of immunity that they feel because of their unions.
Right.
Because they understand that their unions will protect them no matter what.
Right. Which, in general is how some unions should work. But,
Okay, so let's break this down.
Yeah.
I think the most frustrating part about a police union is how effective they are.
Right.
I think that is the most frustrating part about that exists inside of this this conversation about police unionization. The higher ups in the chain of command understand that regardless of what the actions are of the police, of their officers, it is their responsibility to protect them, like at all costs.
Right.
And that is what a union is supposed to be doing for its employees.
Right.
It just so happens that one of, if not the most effective union in this nation is protecting a bunch of like demonic skinheads, essentially.
Yeah. Again, like reiterating from the last episode, in case you didn't listen to it, we're blatantly like put out there, like this is not an all cops thing.
No,
like, we recognize, bitch.
No, look.
You gave the disclaimer
look,
last week.
Look, this is the thing. It is. You can be friends with an individual cop like we are. We consider this cop a close friend of ours.
Right.
But at the same time, it is a matter of the institution of policing being the issue.
Yeah.
So as a whole, it is all cops because they exist inside of that institution.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter if you personally are like the nicest human being and you rescue kittens on Tuesdays, right? Or like you volunteer at like a homeless shelter. At the end of the day, the institution that you have made the decision to work for exerts undue force upon civilians for no reason. Mm-hmm. And that is the issue.
Well, I mean, the issue is that like the union is so powerful that they can determine whether or not to take accountability, and they always choose not to.
No, it's a matter of they can exert that kind of force because they know that they're protected.
Yeah.
So they never have to think twice about it.
Right.
This was, I scrolled through a YouTube short and it came up with this story, but there was the Chicago police officer that shot like a 13-year-old kid. And he had special needs or something of the sort, and he was shot. And the police captain went on a news program and basically said, well, yeah, well, I'm, it's actually a good thing that the cop only shot the kid once because he showed restraint.
That's so fucking wild. See, it's one thing to talk about like when you punch a dude in handcuffs, and it's another thing when you're shooting a fucking child.
And I honestly don't even remember if the child lived or died. It doesn't matter
if that's the excuse you're making.
Yeah. But so the institution of policing, as we said last time, works with capital. It works in tandem in order to protect the power of the elite.
And it is funded and feels that it does not have to, take any accountability for their actions and has all the power because they are
self-governed.
Yeah, they're self-governed and in a sense, paid for through tax money, but it is the capital owners that make all the huge donations to essentially militarize them to the extent that they are, especially in the bigger cities. And that is a bit of an issue because they are the ones that will call them to respond to anything that is happening to their places of business. If, something like a World Series happens in a city.
So, I mean, for anyone that is listening to this, which is literally three people, most of you you've already heard this, but to anyone that may be new, that doesn't quite understand the differences between a trade labor union and a police union, so the basic breakdown is that a trade labor union, or just a labor union in general, they are working in direct opposition of capital. That means that the democratically elected group of people are doing everything that they can to fight the capital holders to ensure that employees get fair wages, good working environments, and just general work protection to make sure that the employees are not being exploited for their labor. Whereas a union for police works in tandem with capital. They are unionizing and pushing the agenda of capital holders while receiving tons of donation money from capital holders to ensure that the needs of capital holders will always be higher than the needs of the civilians.
Yeah, because they will be much more likely to respond and do, it sounds fucked up, but essentially do the bidding of those donors. And
absolutely.
Look out for their interest specifically because they're the ones that give them the extra budget to get all their big boy toys to make them feel like they're army men.
And if you even track donation records of most police unions, if not all police unions inside of this country, you will see that they primarily donate to Republican politicians. And there is a reason for this, because Republican politicians will do everything that they can to lower the taxes or do something in terms of policy to benefit capital. That is the end goal of every single Republican politician rather. And when you see that a police union is donating to Republican candidates, you are seeing that they are essentially
trying to convert the police from a public service into a private
military force. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is horrifying. And it's something else, like a little bit of a side tangent, but like this same sort of thing is why it's also more concerning and why you told me that it's not accepted as like a actual labor union for groups like the producers, who like the actors and writers are striking against right now, because the producer, I almost said IATSE, but that's an actual labor union that covers a bunch of people who are also going through it because of these strikes, who I believe also might be striking soon.
I fucking hope so.
yeah.
Shut the whole shit down.
Yeah, no, they're like the only.
I mean, like
ones left.
IATSE is primarily for the grip people. So,
But it's like the grips, the sound engineers, the makeup artists, the fight coordinators, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But the producers are the ones that are the capital holders, and they're like
No. I should clarify this. The producers are not capital holders. The producers work in tandem with.
So so them having
they're-
their group, they're being struck against because of their relationship with the capital holders. And it just goes to show like how, fucked it is that all these people are striking against them because of how much they are trying to take away and like neglect and not provide and manipulate and castrate the industries that work under them and under the capital holders.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the only ones that got a deal were the directors, who are the next on the food chain.
Shout outs to the directors, bro.
Yeah. For some reason, offered
to
like the
kind of
best
piggyback
contract
that,
they were ever offered.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, the specific group of people that you were talking about, they're called the professional managerial class. So they are the people that are in like middle management. We're not talking C-suite, but we're talking department heads, supervisors, and things of that sort, where they directly benefit from capital. The unionization of those people are not recognized by trade labor unions simply because they are also only making money by exploiting the value of
the people under them.
Yes, absolutely. So when we had Ryan on, which that episode is not going to be releasing until the week after,
Next week?
he would talk to us about the
Principles.
going on, trying to unionize.
Yeah,
they were trying to unionize. And it is a problem because if you are allowing the professional managerial class, or PMC, to unionize, then at any point, if the working class want to bust that union, this is something that you brought up.
Yeah.
If you ever try to bust that union, or the police union or anything like that, that affects
in turn try to use the exact same argumentation and reasoning to destroy the unions of the actual lower and working classes.
Yeah.
The labor classes, I should say.
And with the current system that we live in and the little amount of labor power that still exists in this country, that would be incredibly detrimental to any labor activist.
Yeah. They're like the act of trying to unionize on those fronts and those positions for the people higher up on the economic ladder is literally forcing the whole like concept and idea of unions to become like a catch-22.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, yeah, okay, you guys want the solidarity. That's cool. That's great. We respect it. We're going to do that too, because now we can still bargain and we can strike. I don't know how they would even strike to not provide work to the labor class. Because
I wouldn't even begin to understand how
I couldn't wrap my
the
head
PMC
around.
union would strike.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, we're going to go on strike. Cool. Everything is still going to get done.
Yeah.
It's like you being in your office in an air-conditioned room isn't going to change the productivity of the people below you.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, I guess. If they do that, then, maybe the capital holding class would just be like, you know what? We always knew it, but you guys are useless, so we're just firing off.
So this is the thing. They are always the first on the chopping block.
Yeah.
In every round of layoffs in every major corporation, they are always
the middle management.
Yeah, they are always the first group of people to be let go because
they
capital holders know.
Yeah.
They do. And that's why anytime that a new manager or a new department head gets put in, they immediately go and they start fucking with things because
Right.
they need to show that they're doing something.
That makes sense.
And if the things that they're doing affects the productivity of the capital holders, then of course they're going to get laid off. But at the same time,
Not if it's in a good way.
yeah, but most of the time the productivity is not going to be affected because like productivity in the workforce has only risen since the 60s. It has never dipped.
Right.
The only thing that they can do is set more unrealistic metrics to force people to work more unpaid overtime for salaried workers, or like set unrealistic quotas for factory line workers to try to meet.
Yeah.
Just all so that
Amazon
they
workers.
yeah, just so that they can all keep their jobs.
Right.
It's absolutely fucking demonic, and that's why that group of people suck.
Yeah.
Every single
put it lightly.
every single person that works in one of those positions suck. And the professional managerial class kind of stretches beyond just middle managers. It's people that work high paying office jobs that don't really contribute anything to like the actual means of production of anything. So to a certain degree, like software engineers and me. I completely lost my train of thought. Hold on. Oh, yeah. So the thing with police and going back to regulations that we were talking about. So this happened in Baltimore after they were put under investigation for a lot of really, really fucked up crimes that the Baltimore Police Department committed. What they ended up doing was the union quietly decided to slow down service. So they would show up there, but their response times would double or triple. And when those metrics were shown back to state legislature, they would just be like, oh, it's because of these new, all of these new regulations that you put into how we conduct our work that causes us to slow down our service. And that is how the police can consistently maintain their power.
Yeah.
It's because while the institution is inherently like evil and racist and like literally does more harm to communities than good, it is still a necessary service.
Right.
Like I'm not at the point in my radicalization politically where I believe that there should be a total abolishment of, or the total abolition of police. I still believe that there should be a publicly funded service of policing, because if you take that out now, without restructuring the government, without restructuring the way that America has a relationship with the capital, all that's going to happen is that we are going to get privatized military forces.
Yeah.
That will not have to answer to anybody.
Right. And that's the entire reason that you want it to be like a public service for everyone who's like convinced through whoever and whatever propaganda you see on X and wherever else on your social medias about, privatizing everything and everything good being coming from the private sector. It's like, no, the whole reason that you want things in the public sector is because even if there is like a corrupt individual or whatever, there is always someone higher on the ladder that can like will like start the process to try to get someone out if something is at a certain level of fucked. And we can see what happens when you get some fucking self-proclaimed billionaire just hiring all of his friends, saying they're all the best people, and then, over the course of 4 years, firing 3/4 of them and having to rehire because like those weren't like the best people, but like the replacements, they're the best people. So like I've just been making you wait. We're only getting better because we started in the trash, but that's why you want everything to work in the public sector, and why you don't want that.
It's not just that. It's if everything exists in the public sector and we actually grant more democratic power to the people, we can hold them accountable for their actions.
Right.
at this current point in time, no one can hold them accountable.
Because all of the moneyed interests are just doing everything they can to
At the federal level.
Yeah. To like make the government look and appear to the public more inept so that they don't trust it, so that they convince people to like not vote for things that fund the government programs more, because that's taking your hard-earned dollars and putting it into their pockets, because they get to make some opposing private entity that's going to be more trusted. But because it's private, they get to make all the rules.
Yeah.
And because they have money and lawyers.
And like one of the biggest groups that will consistently rally for continued militarization and continued privatization of police force, or just policing in general, it's the NRA, because why wouldn't they?
Of course.
And I think the biggest thing,
if everyone's scared of like their neighbors and the cops and the governments, that means everyone's going to get guns. Which is sad that it's, true. Like gun ownership numbers have fucking
risen. Only risen.
Especially
and
since COVID.
This is the funniest thing. There is this schizophrenic like belief right now that, or I should rather say, it's a schizophrenic attack that people are having, where they believe that the crime rates are rising in this country, when they're about the same as they have been for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
By all metrics, violent crimes haven't really risen that much more. Crimes in general have not risen. Gun-related violence has risen quite a lot, but that is because there are just more guns in circulation now than there has ever been.
Right.
But
which is the
guns aren't the problem.
Every year.
Guns aren't the problem, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the continued military. So
I mean, to an extent, it's not. It's all the propagandizing. I don't know if that's the word, but like it's all the moneyed interest making everyone that terrified that they need to get a gun, and like everyone's
but at the end of the day, it's like if they didn't have the gun,
you
know what I mean?
Right.
Like the guns are still the problem,
right? No, I'm not saying they're not a problem, but like technically
it's
speaking,
still the problem.
I mean, the bigger picture is like what is making people think they need guns.
Sure, but at the end of the day, the guns are still causing the violence.
Yes,
like that.
Right.
That's that we need to. Yeah, we just need to set that straight. Like. Okay, so this is the problem. Man, I don't want this to be a gun episode, but this is going to be a gun episode. So the problem is, at this point, guns are never going to go away in this country.
Yeah,
it is absolutely impossible. So in Australia, I want to say this was in the 90s, after their
first school shooting.
It was a mass shooting. I don't know if it was a school shooting. It was Port Arthur. I believe that's what it was. The government offered a gun buyback program where the government would give you X amount of dollars for the gun. You give them the gun, and then after all of that happened, guns were heavily regulated.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get a gun now, but you would have to be like a hunter, or you would have to have like a series of licenses and certificates in order for you to even qualify to own like a hunting rifle.
Yeah.
I think
which
that's
is terrifying
fine.
Because they have the scariest animals.
And if they can fucking live without guns, we can too.
Yeah.
Like if they can deal with kangaroos without shotguns, I'm pretty sure we can too.
Yeah,
the worst that we have is a fucking deer in our neck of the woods.
I mean, if you go north enough, you might get a moose, and those are nature's tanks. At least in this continent.
Yeah. But the issue is that after nearly 2 centuries of constant propaganda, I thought you were
going to say 2 centuries of like the gunman in Australia. I was like, Eric,
no.
It's 30 years.
I see. The thing is, I don't have enough knowledge of like the 1800s to really give like a solid grasp of, or to have a very solid grasp of like what America's relationship with guns was back then. But I can definitely say that our relationship with guns drastically changed in the 70s and 80s.
Well, I mean, I think it changed after the Civil War.
Sure.
I think that's where like the first peak happened, because they're like, oh man,
we gotta hide it from
all the slaves are free now. Like they're just gonna seek revenge, so we just gotta stockpile.
Yeah. And through a long line of decisions that were just absolutely flubbed by the federal government, as well as Abraham Lincoln's absolute pussyfooting around appointment of his vice president, that led us to this point of like race relations in this country.
Thanks, Booth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, it's,
If he was there for the second term, it might be a little different.
I mean, realistically, I feel like every single fucking U.S. president is just a war criminal.
I mean...
Yeah, and like, even our best ones were racist pieces of shit.
Well, I mean, again, that's just...
Yeah.
The Times. Like the newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't even know where we were going with this. We just started talking about guns. Oh, the effort to defund the police. I think that the reason why everybody gets so up in arms about defunding the police is because there is this inherent belief that cops are righteous and good. And that is because of the propaganda of shows like Law and Order SVU, Blue Bloods, NCIS, CSI, thank you. And it's all of these shows that basically turn cops into superhumans. Right. They're the superheroes that always swoop in and save the day until you have actually had to interact with a cop on like a very serious level. And then you realize these are some of the most incompetent motherfuckers that you will ever interact with, because they're not trained to deal with those issues.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you've ever watched Law and Order SVU.
I've seen a few episodes, but
it's like, if there is ever a sexual assault, you're not getting Olivia Benson.
Yeah.
You're getting like, you're getting some guy named like Connor that is just going to basically make you cry because like that's the only way that they know how to talk to people. Like, you're not going to get someone that is empathetic, that will actually be there to hold your hand and help you through the legal process as well as the investigation to make sure that justice is found.
Yeah. And I mean, I think part of it, this might sound like I'm in the propaganda or whatever, but it's like, I'm sure part of it is almost kind of like what doctors go through, where it's like, this is someone's worst day of their life, and they're just like conditioned after a certain point. We're like, yeah, no, it's this.
No, you're definitely giving into the propaganda.
Okay.
Yeah. It's because like the reason why we don't have a social worker or someone that is trained to do that is because we only funnel funding into the police.
Yeah. And
if you
then
take
we just
the funding,
close all of the fucking places that are supposed to help all the mentally ill people.
Exactly. So it's by design. It is by design that it is ineffective.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it's like that's I think, to go back to the point you were originally trying to make and sort of like connect the two dots. It's the whole actual meaning behind what the movement of defunding the police was supposed to be was to sort of take some of these responsibilities that have fallen to the police because we've cut every other program to make it so that only the police respond to any and every kind of emergency, none of which they're equipped to actually deal with.
They're not trained to deal with it.
Yeah, the defunding was to like just give some of the money that's in those departments to like hire people who are specialized in handling those situations, so that these interactions in these situations don't so frequently accidentally become deadly.
Okay, I'm talking directly to you, Officer O'Shaughnessy in Boston. Okay, you don't need the overtime. You don't need to be making $152,000 after overtime every single fucking year.
What?
That's where the funding goes to.
Oh.
It goes to cop overtime. It goes to cop overtimes. It goes to more guns. It goes to more military. Like, what the fuck are you doing with those rifles if you aren't going to, storm into a fucking classroom and save 30 children?
Well, what they're going to do is storm the Capitol.
Yeah, January 6th is my favorite day.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, 7 people had heart attack. They just had one too many Arby's beef witches.
had to get that protein before they fucking.
Yeah. They just needed the wettest, sloppiest beef in their bodies. Yeah.
It's what the president would want me to do.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, I don't believe in the total abolition of.
Yeah.
Of
That's
policing.
not going to solve anything.
Yeah. I mean, if the police organizations were actually more community oriented and it was people that were actually in the communities that they were policing, I think that would be a very different case, because you can't take a kid from like Glenview that wants to be a cop in the city
downtown.
and put him into like O Block and expect him to understand the inner workings of that area that is torn apart because of consistent exploitation and consistent discrimination. They don't like. There will never be any kind of relationship because they don't understand how that community has been treated by policing in the past.
Right.
So
it's like, on that note, though, I understand, especially for the suburbs and stuff, and like other parts of the city where people would grow up and still want and choose to become cops. That makes sense. But when it comes to some of those areas where they just have that relationship with the police and, almost no one wants to be one, it's like, especially with all the different mayors that we've had over the years, it's like, oh, but these are the places that we need the most. Even though it doesn't solve anything.
I mean, it's a matter of like, there's no community incentive for them to be cops because all they know is oppression by the police.
Right.
So why would you ever want to be an oppressor if you have been the oppressed your entire life?
Yeah.
I mean,
aside from thinking maybe it's one of the
to
only
a certain
ways
degree,
out.
to a certain degree, like again, we know, like one of our close friends is a cop. He was not like one of those comic book villains that were a bully in high school and just wanted to be a bully in the in his
he wasn't
profession.
a Clint Eastwood character.
But there are a lot of people that go into policing for that reason.
For the power trip.
Yeah. And I don't have the answers. I don't have the solution for how you can weed those people out, but that is a huge part of the problem.
Right.
And we only know one person that is a cop. We don't know many other people that work in the force. But I don't know, just from all the body cam footage that you see and all of that, you can make a pretty educated guess that our friend is a little bit of an anomaly and not the general rule.
Right. Well, I mean, it all goes back to the whole like accountability and the stuff that we talked about last episode, where it's like, even if you want to, like, you're the one that's going to be putting yourself in danger if you try to speak up about any of the shit.
Yeah, because if they're gonna go, like, if the union goes, if the union is protesting against regulations by slowing down response times, what the fuck is gonna happen to you, the rat? Because at the end of the day, the police kind of operate like a gang.
I mean,
you don't.
In some cases, a bit too literally. But
they hate rats. You are not supposed to sell out your brother.
Right.
So
I think that's also kind of unions in general.
Yeah.
I mean, they call them scabs, but they name their rat.
But again,
Scabby.
there is a definitely a difference again between a labor union that is fighting against capital and the police. Yeah. Like that is a huge distinction that you cannot draw that similarity.
Yeah, true.
Because when a
Either
laborer,
way, fuck you, guy from Arrow.
Yeah, fuck you. Because a laborer stepping out of line and showing dissent from the union movement shows that union can be broken.
Right.
Whereas a cop covering for another cop is just covering for a crime.
Right.
Like those are two very, very different things that we cannot draw similarities across. So I just definitely needed to point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, we know one person in the force. We know that he is a good person because we've known him for 15 years, but like we can't let that cloud our judgment of the overhaul
or anything.
The entire institution.
Yeah.
To go back on the point of the defund the police movement, it's definitely quieted down quite a lot because it kind of got libbed up. got de-radicalized real quick because everybody was just really, really fucking schizophrenic about the entire ordeal. You like the part of this episode that was cut out was when Jesse was talking about how like the defund the police movement just got kind of roped into an argument of semantics around what defund meant.
Yeah.
And like the entire idea was not to abolish police
or to like withdraw all funding.
Yeah, it's just I think that's why I set up that whole like Officer O'Shaughnessy in Boston thing. These people do not deserve that much money.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but like if your department can allow an officer to work like 80 hours of overtime or whatever the fuck it is on average for every like 2-week pay cycle, what are we doing? What are we doing with those funds?
It's also like at the same time, it's like how if you're working those hours, how effective are you? Yeah,
it's like if you're being forced to work all of these hours and you're constantly saying you're understaffed, that means you have the funds to hire more police officers.
Yeah.
And if your numbers are if that officer worked in any other industry where they were getting 80 hours of overtime but were still like, oh man, your numbers are low, or like the crime rates kept rising or whatever, you would be fucking fired so fast.
Yep.
It's not even funny.
Yeah.
And it's like, listen, man, you know what would really help with the violent crimes inside of a city? You fucking pump that community with some money so that like kids can have food. Kids can have a place after school that they can go to get help with education. You put industry in those areas so that the parents can work a meaningful job that can provide enough money where they don't have to work 6 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads.
Yeah. Or like going back to the kids thing, not even like just an education, just some sort of program for sports activities, something that fucking gets them more involved.
But the thing is, it's like
members.
If the public education system got more funding, then they would be able to provide those services to those kids.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's like all of the funding goes to the police departments so that, you know, Chicago PD can get another fucking tank or another armored vehicle. When have we ever had to use one? When are we ever going to need to use one?
When we pulled up the bridges.
Because like this is the thing, right? You having 6 tanks isn't going to stop the next 9/11.
Yeah.
Because like you said in the last episode, the cops are not there to prevent violence. The cops are there to...
It's pretty like, and that's not even like to their fault. Like
it's just by design.
Yeah.
It is just by design of what is expected of a police officer. You are not the police are not supposed to prevent violence. They are there to ensure that it's essentially like they're there to solve the crime that has already happened.
Yeah, solve the crime, deter crime from happening in the first place, or just, you know, respond at the very least, respond appropriately. And that's like the thing that gets so out of hand because they're not equipped to handle half of the things that they get called to respond to.
And they shouldn't be called for those issues.
Yeah.
You know? It's like if someone is having a mental breakdown, why the fuck are you calling the cops?
Yeah.
A medical professional should probably be there to work to help that individual work through their issues because they are the ones that are trained to handle that.
Right.
And like the problem with this discourse that is fucking sickening to me is that they're always saying, oh, we just need more training. We just constantly need more training. And it's like, that's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Because like the kid in Park Ridge that went to Maine South that ended up getting, you know, some form of an academic scholarship to like a nice private university, he's not the one that's going to be a fucking cop.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need for him to be the cop.
Right.
You're not going to get people that think first before they shoot. I'm sorry. That's just the reality of like the type of people that go into being a police officer.
Right.
Like you're not going to get people from the PMC to join you in arms, my brother. Like that's not happening. That's a fucking pipe dream.
Wait, from the what?
the professional middle managerial class. You're not going to get someone that works at Goldman Sachs to give up his $350,000 a year salary to go work as a police officer.
No, he's the one that's funding his private military.
Exactly.
Force.
Why would any of those people give up their life of luxury and comfort to go slum it with their enforcers? That's a fucking stupid ask.
Yeah. But it's that's one of the first things that if you were to reroute the funds should go to is having those because I know you said medical professional or whatever, but in most cases when you call 911, if it's a medical emergency of a heart attack or whatever, they call an ambulance. EMTs will be there.
But the EMTs are also not equipped to deal with a mental situation.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. It needs to be specifically someone who is trained in that kind of mental health aspect.
But the
need those
biggest
kind of
issue
professionals.
is that you need to. So in order for that to happen, you would have to fix the healthcare system because as a country, we have the lowest amount of doctors per capita. In developed nations, we have the lowest amount of doctors per capita. In the richest nation in the world, we gatekeep medicine by making medical school cost $200,000 plus for you to have a chance at getting a degree to practice medicine.
To say that you want to help people for a living for the rest of your life is all right, buddy, listen, if you're going to be a goody two-shoes for the rest of your life, we're going to make sure that you regret it every day of your life for the next 30 years.
In order for you to have programs, to have social workers that are well-trained, as well as well compensated enough, you have to take away the funding from the police because they don't need more rifles. They don't need new Dodge Chargers to roll around in and patrol whatever street it is.
Yeah.
What needs to happen is that there needs to be actual reform with the healthcare system as well as social services to ensure that the right people are contacted for each need.
Yeah. And all of these are things that should be being adjusted and addressed at a federal and just governmental level. This should all be worked out in the public sphere for the public. Because this is privatization will just exaggerate these issues and the only people left in charge will be the people who are doing and promoting and perpetuating all the fucked up cycles the most. Everyone it's and it goes back to that idea of everyone focusing on the individual aspect instead of the communal, the institutional. But yeah, I'm not even talking institutions. I'm just saying in general, people and who seek out these positions that have any kind of power are just doing it with the idea of what do I get out of this in mind? And that's kind of what you were talking about, where you were talking about who's going to try to be a police officer and stuff like that. It's not it's just going to be the bad kids in class who were always disrupting everything. It's literally just the people who are not sure. There's going to be a couple kids who want to be a cop ever since they grew up. Maybe they had a relative that did it and they just idolized them. But even those people, at a certain age, once you find out the money, the benefits, the accountability, if you hear from the wrong people and you're the wrong kind of person who's just oh yeah, we get this kind of equipment, we got these toys and whatever, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. It's supposed to be a community service sort of position. And if you're doing it for any other reason, that's the wrong reason to get into that profession.
Yeah, to kind of just wrap up this episode, if you're going to go ahead and ever throw this quote around, say it in full. One bad apple rots the whole barrel. It's not just one bad apple.
No.
It's not just one bad apple.
Not.
All it takes is one to ruin everything.
Yeah.
And let's be a little bit more honest about that discourse. If you're, either a common sense centrist or a libbed out Democrat that really loves NATO, I just really want you to think about that one. So before I sign off, shout out to Doug Cameron. All right. Get me out.